ごい宇宙人の話なんか、なんでわざわざみんな見るのと怖い映画だと思ってたんですけど、見に行ったらまさか主人公が自分と同じ10歳の少年で、しかもその捨て猫を飼うような感覚で宇宙人と友達になって宇宙人と隠れて住んで、でもうハラハラワクワクドキドキして最後に感動して、たった2時間、2時間後にはあんなに怖いと思ってた宇宙人が僕も友達になりたい大好きってなっていて、こんな映画を作る人たちがいるのすごいなと思って、日本ではね、映画館で公開される映画の小冊子とパンフレットが売ってるんですね、必ず。今でもそうなんですけど、で早速買ってもらったパンフレットを見ていたら、映画に出てこない秀ノ内さんが映って、なんでこんな偉そうな秀ノ内さんが作るの誰だと思ったら、それがスピルバーグ。その時初めて映画には出てこないけれども、それを作っている大人がいる、監督というすごい仕事をする人がいるというのを意識して、それが監督に憧れるきっかけです。
So this might sound surprising, but when I was 10 years old, E.T. came out. I was a child who was actually very scared of horror films. It was not a type of movie that I was interested in seeing. And this was the same for E.T. I thought, why would anyone want to go see this movie about a creepy alien? It scared me. But I did actually go to see the film, and I was surprised to find that the main character was a 10-year-old boy like myself, who took in this alien just as if it was a stray cat, and brought him into his home and became friends with him and lived with him and hid him. And this was something that really excited me while I was watching the film. I could really relate to it, and I was moved by it. So just after 2 hours later, I was surprised to find that this alien that I thought was really scary and creepy, and my feelings totally changed. I really fell in love with him and wanted to become friends with E.T. And I thought to myself, wow, the person who made this film is really amazing. In Japanese movie theaters, it's still the case today, they often have pamphlets or just merchandise that relates to the film. So I picked one up, or my relative who was there bought one for me, and I took a look at it, and there was a picture of a gentleman with a beard who had not appeared in the film, and I was thinking, who is this person who looks so important? And it was Spielberg. And I thought, wow, he wasn't in the movie, but he was the person who made the movie. And that was the first time I was aware of the existence of someone called a director. And this was something I thought, this is amazing. This is a job you can do. So this was really my first time, and that was a pivotal moment for me in becoming a filmmaker.
I'm going to give David permission to take it away, and I'll interrupt whenever I.
Sure. So you're from Maebashi, Gunma. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are there like a lot of ghosts there?
What? Why?
Where did all the ghosts and all this folklore and stuff come from?
そのために調べてるのもあるけれども、怖がりのくせに好きではあったんです、子供の頃から。怖いお話の本とか読んだり、テレビで見たり、ホラー映画までは見れなかったけれども、本を読んだりが好きだったので、読むと眠れなくなっちゃう神経質なことでも別に僕の地元がお化けが多いわけじゃなくて、多分僕の頭の中にその妄想のお化けが多かったんだと思います。で、子供の時怖がりだったので、怖い本読んで怖くなって眠れなくなってどうしようって布団に潜った時に、僕の妄想の中では幽霊だったら別にどんなに布団かぶろうが入ってくるんじゃないかで想像しちゃう子供だったので、そういうのを全部大人になってから自分で例文にしました。
I wonder where it did come from. I mean, it's not that it all came from my hometown. So many things I had to just do research into and to check myself. But again, as a child, I was easily scared. That being said, I did really enjoy scary books and TV programs. I didn't go as far as watching horror movies, but I would really love to read scary books. When I did that, I would not be able to sleep. I would get very nervous. So that was something I had when I was young. It wasn't that my hometown itself was full of ghosts. I think it was just in my head that I had all these delusions or illusions of scary things. So again, I would read these books, I wouldn't be able to fall asleep, I would burrow into my futon, but no matter how far I got in there, I knew that I would not be able to be protected from ghosts, because things could possibly burrow in there with me. So this was something that stayed with me until I was an adult and made its way into Ju-on.
And this is why I can't watch your films.
That's right, you can I guess.
No matter how far I burrow into the film.
No way to escape.
逃げ場をなくしたいんですよ。いろんな人の。逃げる場所をなくしたい。
I want to not allow anyone to escape. Everyone has to have that same feeling. No way to escape.
Well, this is a perfect segue because the other day you talked about DDT's inspiration, and you told me exactly what you just said. I didn't get horror movies as a kid. Why would people want to watch this? So how did you turn that upside down and become a master of horror?
なぜかあったか。多分なんですかね。中学生だから13歳か14歳の時の頃に知ってる世代と知らない世代あると思いますけど、VHS という VHS というビデオテープというものができて、それが一般の家庭に普及したんです。で、その時にもうとにかく家で劇場でしか見れなかった映画が家でも見れる、テレビのも録画すればもう一度見れるっていうことがその時にすごく画期的で、映画が好きな人にとってはものすごい映画を自分の手にできる、いつでも見れるっていうのはすごいことで、その頃ホラー映画とか B 級扱いで今より地位が低かったので、権利が安くて今まで映画館でもかからなかった映画が出回ったんです、VHS に入れて。でその頃ホラー映画の VHS テープっていうのが出回ったことで、苦手な僕とか13歳14歳ぐらいの子供のところにも見る機会が回ってきて、で好きな友達が清水は映画が好きっていう割にホラー映画ばかりしてるから見た方がいい、面白いって言われて、最初は無理やりコアを顔隠し目を隠しながら見ているうちに楽しみ方を知ったという感じです。
So I think this was maybe when I was 13 or 14 years old as a middle school student, and I think that depending on the ages of everyone here, you might know depending on your generation, but that was the time that VHS, the videotapes, came out. And this is something that became very popular among just the general population. At the time, it was something that previously you had to go to the movie theater to go see a film, but now this is something that really gave you a movie right in your hands. It was accessible in your own home. Not only that, if the movie came on TV, you'd be able to record it and watch it as much as you'd like. This was revolutionary for me at that age. I think for people who love film, it was revolutionary for them as well. And at that time, horror was not very well esteemed within film, so it was actually, I guess, cheaper and more easily accessible in the movies and on VHS as well. As I mentioned, I was kind of a scaredy cat kind of kid, but I thought that, okay, maybe this is something that I now have the ability to watch because it was so available. And a good friend of mine said, Shimizu, I know you like movies, and you're always saying that, making fun of horror, saying you don't want to watch it, but why don't you give it a try? And I did, and I was extremely scared the whole time I was watching it, but while watching it, I really came to understand why it was enjoyable, and I enjoyed it myself.
その頃にイービル・デッドっていう、イービル・デッドっていうサムライム監督の映画を初めて VHS で見たんですけども、その時にはこんな映画を作る大人は絶対頭がおかしいって言ったんですけど、まさかその人と20年後一緒に仕事をすることになると思っていなかったので、人間どうなのかわからないなと今で思います。
At that time, that was when Evil Dead came out, and I thought to myself, wow, the director who made this film must be really messed up. Little did I know that 20 years later, we would be working together. So I really thought you never know how your life is going to end up, and I still think that.
So is he messed up?
Or
変な人ですけど、ものすごく家族思いの人間味のある人ですね。
Yes, I mean, he's a bit messed up, but he actually is a really good family man as well.
So jump ahead a little bit from middle school. Is it true assistant director, an AD. You were an AD freelance for several years before going to film school of Tokyo?
ジョーカージョーって誰ですか？
助監督。すいません。
あ、助監督。あ、そうそうそう。
なんか
助監督を僕の場合短いんですけど、
はい
やってる人は一生やってるので、アメリカと違って日本だと監督になるためのステップアップとして助監督というポジションがあるんですね。アメリカだともう助監督という仕事で成り立ってるんですけど、日本では助監督は監督になりたい人になるためのステップアップとしてあるんですけど、監督やれない人も一生やれない人もいます。人によってチャンスをつかめるかどうか。で僕の場合は運が良かったんですけど、本当3、4年ですね、助監督をやっていた期間。で、その助監督をやりながら、仕事でやりながら、これ助監督だけやっててもチャンスをつかめないと思ったので、映画美学校という講座だったんですけど、セミナーだったんですけど、10ヶ月。僕が行ってた時は10ヶ月のセミナーだったんですけど、それに通って黒沢清監督とか高橋宏さんというリングのお客さんとか、そういう人たちに出会ってたまたまチャンスが巡ってきた。
So it actually was a relatively short time. Just to give you background, in Japan, it might be different than here in the States, where AD, I think, is a job in itself. In Japan, it's actually seen as a stepping stone to becoming a director. So for people who are aspiring directors, this is a necessary step that they must take. It doesn't mean that everyone who's an AD goes on to be a director. Some people just don't have that chance, and their whole lives they never become directors. I actually was lucky in that I was an AD for about 3 or 4 years before moving on. But while I was working as an AD, I didn't know if that would necessarily connect directly to what I wanted to do. I thought I needed to give myself more of an opportunity. So as you said, I went to the film school of Tokyo. It was sort of a 10-month period, 10-month, I guess, semester where I took different classes. That is where I encountered many different people. I was there with Kurosawa as the director, also Hiroshi Takahashi, who was the screenwriter for Rain, was another person I encountered during my time there. So it was a very beneficial time.
Right, so that's where you encountered Kiyoshi Kurosawa, everybody knows, great Japanese filmmaker. And the screenwriter is Takashi? So they were both your mentors and showed you the way, and found your way to features?
まずはシナリオのクラスは、脚本のクラスは広志高橋のクラスを僕は選んで、演出の勉強をするクラスは清志黒沢のクラスを選んだんですけど、清志黒沢は忙しくて授業クラスは1回しかなかったです。10ヶ月生徒は文句言ってました。
Yeah, so I took a screenwriting class, and that was the one with Hiroshi Takahashi, the screenwriter for Rain. The other class, the directing class with Kiyoshi Kurosawa, I took that as well, but he was so busy he never actually showed up. So there were in 10 months, so there was a lot of complaints.
But he introduced you to get a feature made, right? Or did this?
まずは清志黒沢のが、そのクラスの中で、自分で書いたオリジナルのシナリオ、脚本から一番人に見せたいところを選んで3分間にまとめて映像で提出しろっていう、それはスタッフ、クルーも出演するキャスト俳優も自分のつてで自分の仲間で作ったものでいいから、映像は綺麗じゃなくてもいいから3分間に何とか編集してまとめたものを提出しなさいという課題がある。で、その頃は今みたいにスマホで撮れるほど楽じゃなかったので大変だったんです。そこに3分間のものを作るに行き着くまで。僕も本当知り合いのつてを回って機材を借りて、家の VHS のデッキダビング状態でこうやってでもう虹が汚いノイズが入ってきたんですけど、それでもなんとか3分にまとめて提出して、でもそれを見た黒沢清監督や 高橋宏さんとか他にも青山真司さんとか講師がいっぱいいたんですけど、みんながすごく褒めてくれて、それを見て黒沢清監督がちょっと君に紹介したい枠があるということで、学校の怪談時という、本当ローカルで1回しかやらないテレビの思い出す番組の3分間の枠を2本だけ僕に監督するチャンスをくれて、でそれを見た今度は高橋宏さん、脚本家の高橋宏さんがそれを見て、別のプロデューサーに紹介してくれてジオンが生まれた。
So in the class, we were given an assignment. This is in Kurosawa's class. We were given an assignment in regard to writing an original screenplay and actually narrowing it down to a 3-minute movie or video. We were responsible for finding the cast, the staffing, the crew, all of that. The quality of the image didn't have to be anything perfect, but basically we would have to do the editing and all of that ourselves. If you can picture it, it wasn't like today where you can easily make a film on a smartphone. So the process, even to make a 3-minute film, was very laborious. I gathered all my acquaintances and I had people help out by providing equipment. This is going back to when we were using VHS, and so it was like Ring. I was like going back and forth with the video and the VCR just to make this 3-minute film. But when I finished it, when I showed Kurosawa and Hiroshi Takahashi, the screenwriter I mentioned, as well as Shin Aoyama, there were a bunch of people, professors or people who were teaching in this program. They all praised my work. So at that point, it was Kurosawa who said, I will introduce you to another opportunity, which ended up being Gakko Kaidanji, which was a local TV program. And he arranged it so that I would be able to make 2 3-minute films or pieces for this TV program. At the same time, the screenwriter, Hiroshi Takahashi, introduced me to another producer, and that is what led to, or connected to, Ju-on.
So, and then around this time you met, or you had the idea of Ju-on in your head, and I read that you met Fuji Takako, the actress, and said, that's my ghost.
そうですね、その課題の3分間の作るときに誰か出てもらう俳優さんが必要でいろいろ探して出てくれる人を探してたんですけど、たまたま友達の女優が演じている演劇の舞台をたまたま見に行ったときに違う役で脇の役で出てた女の人になぜか気になってこの人にゴーストをやってほしいと思って声をかけて紹介してもらって、でその人が結構ずっとジオンのシリーズで僕のジオンのシリーズでは同じゴーストに出てもらうことになっていったんですね。でその人も女優として今もやってるし、続けてるんですけど、あと知ったら同い年だということはたまたま同い年ってことを知ってたんですけど、だいぶ後になってジオンシリーズが続いていくにあたってプロフィールを見直したら誕生日も一緒で偶然ですけど、毎年同じ日に年を取っていく。
That's right. So the assignment I mentioned earlier, the 3-minute movie, I was looking for an actor who would appear in that. I happened to go see a friend of mine who was an actress perform. It was a theater performance, and there was a supporting actress who was in that, and that was the person who I pointed at and said, that's her, I want her for my film. And so she was in all of the Ju-ons. It was the same ghost who appeared in all the films. So again, and she's still performing as an actress to this day. I found out later when I was looking at some of the Ju-on materials that we're actually the same age. Not only that, we share the same birthday. So every year, every year we're... That is super.
でも彼女は実は僕もジュオンシリーズで知り合ったデザイナーと結婚してるんです。だからアメリカ版のグラッチもアメリカの誰だったっけ、アメリカの女優と男優が日本で撮影で知り合ってアメリカ戻ってから撮影終わってから結婚してるので、実はグラッチとかジュオンで生まれたカップルってたくさんいるんですけど、ホラー映画だとそういうポジティブなおめでたいことは宣伝にならないので一切使われなくて、逆に ジオンの関係者はこういう人が離婚しましたとか、そういうのだけ記事になって、なんか怖いことあるんでしょ、嫌なことあるんでしょって言われるんですけど、出せないだけでハッピーなこともたくさんあります。
Just a fun fact, so she actually went on to a designer, not a designer she met during the Ju-on series, and there actually was a similar case in the case of The Grudge. There was an American actor who went to Japan for the film and ended up meeting someone who she later ended up marrying in the States. So there's been a lot of couples who have emerged from The Grudge and Ju-on. That being said, these are horror films, so it actually would not be good press to say, oh, all this happiness is coming out of these horror movies. So the only reporting that does take place is when there are Ju-on or grudge-related divorces or any other kind of unfortunate events. The truth is that there's a lot of happy romances that have been born, it just doesn't get covered.
So what you're saying is you're an unwitting matchmaker.
Cupid, nothing.
So
Good
Kurosawa,
point. Good point. Good point.
thank you. So Kurosawa and Takashi, they introduced you to the producer for Ju-on. And this was V-Cinema. V-Cinema is straight to video at the time in Japan, right? This was Toei? You speak cinema? Or?
東映ビデ
Okay.
オ。東映ビデオはビデオストレートのものだけを作る製品。東映とはまたちょっと違うんですけど、東映ビデオというVCの専門の会社が当時立ち上げた。
Yes, Toei, but to be specific, it actually was a separate company called Toei Video that dealt with straight-to-video productions.
And if I'm not mistaken, word of mouth made these so popular that you remade them in Japan for theatrical?
V そうですね、V シネマの最初は V シネマの自分だったので、それは当時は今ほどインターネットとか SNS が発達してないので、直接の口コミとかが多くて、友達から聞いたんだけど、こういう怖い映画があるらしいけど、うちの近所のレンタルビデオ店に置いてない、なんで置いてくれないんだってお店の人に訴えてくれる人とかが増えて、本当少ししか出回ってなかったビデオが全国にだんだん入荷が増えていって、でそのうちに話題になったって感じです。呪いが広がるように。
So yes, being straight to video, this is something that, of course, back in the day, we didn't have any kind of social media or internet. It wasn't as prevalent as it is today. So word of mouth did make a very big deal. People were saying from their friends, oh, I heard about this film, and they would go to their local video store and say, hey, why aren't you stocking this film? So something that was very small in the beginning ended up being a national sensation. And it was almost like the curse had spread.
And then you did remake it, right? And it got bigger.
でその後日本ジャパニーズのセアトリカルバージョン映画劇場版を日本作ってアメリカにリメイクに行くんですけど、実は V シネマのその最初のビデオストレートの時からリメイクの話は上がってきていて、僕の方にでその頃はアメリカの監督がリメイクすると思ったので、今僕は日本の劇場版映画館にかけるようなジオンを新しいの作ってるから、アメリカで光栄なことなんで好きにやってくれたらいいんじゃないですかって普通に軽く答えてたんですけど、後々自分がやることになってまたジオンやるのかと思いながら侍に説得で作ってました。
Yes, so we did make this version for Japanese movie theaters. In terms of the American version, so in terms of the video version, there was already talk when it was on straight to video, when it was on V-Cinema, there was talk of making a remake actually at that time from the beginning. In terms of the American remake, I assumed that would be done by an American director because at the time I was actually working on the Japanese film movie theater version of Ju-on. So I just answered very lightly, I'm honored and do as you like, thinking that it would be an American director. Little did I know that I'd be doing Ju-on again, that it would be me, but it was actually Sam Raimi and his persuasiveness that got me to do it.
Yeah, so we're back to Sam Raimi, your creepy friend, so. Your weird friend. Talk about, so first of all, the difference from, you're going from V-cinema version, then you're going theatrical version, all Japan, then theatrical version in Hollywood. Can you first talk about your different experiences?
それぞれ違うんですけど、ずっとその3分間のものを作ってからずっとホラーだし、ずっと呪音で来てるのでちょっとやばいと思いましたね。でその間は当たっていまだに呪音の真実って言われるので、僕の一番のライバルは呪音とかクラッチになってます。それを超える代表作を早く作らないといけないです。
They were all different, but they all had their origins in that initial 3-minute video that I had made. And they all were horror, and it was all Ju-on. So essentially it was the same line throughout everything. So I thought, I don't know if this is good, because this is still the same thing I'm doing all this time. So really my biggest rival was Ju-on and The Grudge. This is something I had to overcome.
Oh, okay. So then, did you, if I have the timeline right, you went back to Japan and somewhere around here you made Marebito?
実はグラッチと同じ頃にアメリカのザ・グラッチと同じ頃タイミングでマレビットという映画を作ってました。マレビットって知ってる人少ない、デイビットしかいないんじゃないですか。
So Marebito was actually a film I made at the same time as I was making The American Grudge. I'm wondering if there's anyone here who knows Marebito?
Yeah, Marebito played it at NYAF, like 2005, I believe, if memory serves.
There's a hand who...
Anyone Marebito? Marebito is a crazy movie that stars another filmmaker.
Wow.
So, I just want to ask, with Marebito, is this how you broke through your grudge, through your repetition of grudge?
いや、そういうわけじゃないです。たまたま重なってただけです、時期が。
No, that wasn't the case. It just happened that they were happening at the same time.
Right, but I mean as far as the stories he was telling, because Grudge is a series and Marebito is a completely different story.
そうですね、全然違うものだったので、同じ時期に作っても楽しいなと思って引き受けたんですけど、ハリウッドの契約だと、サマーインと交わした契約だと、本当はこの映画をやってる間に他の作品をやっちゃいけないんです。やっちゃいけないんですけど、僕が契約違反を犯している状態をサムラインが知った上で、日本のそのマレビトは550万しか制作費なくて、アメリカと日本に行ったりする渡航費がなかったので、サムラインがそれを知って、今だったらいいよって内緒でポケットマネーを出してくれて、太っ腹です。日本の地域の会社と違います。
Yeah, so they were being made at the same time, but I thought it'd be pretty interesting to make these two totally different films, at the same time. That was something that appealed to me. In actuality, though, I had a contract with Hollywood, or the Hollywood contract involving the Sam Raimi production said that I could not work in another film while I was working on The Grudge here in the States. So I actually violated the contract, but Sam Raimi was aware of this, and this is a film that I made for only $55,000. So I did not have a big budget, and I didn't have the money to go back and forth between Japan and America to make the film. He actually knew this, and he, out of generosity, his own generosity, said it's fine, and he actually gave me some money for travel expenses. So this is an act of generosity that you never see from Japanese film companies, the Japanese film world.
Very cool. I just want to say, keep fostering questions you have. We will come to you for questions, but we want to keep going on the timeline here.
But let's not forget about getting some differences between shooting in Japan.
That's right.
The kind of same story
Thank you.
in Japan and in the US.
撮影の期間ってことです。
So no, the style that you need.
Anything that you thought was good.
Or were there any experiences in Hollywood in which you made you say, hey?
ハリウッドの経験でもっともっともっと
そうですね。まず契約、ハリウッドの俳優もスタッフ、クルーも契約に縛られているので、ちゃんとこう疲れすぎないように時間で区切られています。 ドアトゥドアで今何時間働いてるからこれ以上オーバーできない。オーバーする場合は別のお金が発生するし、オーバーした3時間オーバーしたら次に始めるまでにも10時間取らなきゃいけないとかって、で日本でも最近だんだんそういうふうにはなってきてるんですけど、日本人は根性でお金なくても頑張ってやっちゃうっていう感じなので、それだと怪我人が出たり危ないことも起こるので、その辺は契約だらけになるのは良くないけど、アメリカのしっかりしたシステムの方がいいなと思うところもありました。でもその逆もあるんですけど、まずは
one big difference is the contract system here in the States that I mentioned earlier, but this applies to everyone in Hollywood, whether it's the actors, the staff, the crew. They don't want people to get tired out, so the time is very clearly divided. It's actually a door-to-door kind of method. So you really can't go over a certain period of time if you're working. If you do exceed this determined amount of time, then you will have to be compensated with extra money. And if you go over, let's say, 3 hours over this designated time, you have to wait maybe 10 hours before you start working again. It's all very clearly delineated. In Japan, it hasn't been like that, but gradually it's changing. In the Japanese culture, we rely on using your guts and pushing through, and it's a different mentality. But as a result, people can get injured on set. It can lead to dangerous situations. So while I think that you shouldn't always be completely reliant on the contractual system, I do think that the way that America has it very clearly delineated with contracts is a good thing. Although there are cases of the opposite, but.
アメリカ、ハリウッドだと、アメリカでもインディーズとハリウッドとシステム、場所によって違うと思うんですけど、ハリウッドのシステムだとお金さえきちんと払って正規のルートをたどって契約すれば警察も協力してくれるし、いろんな施設とか場所は借りられるじゃないですか。撮影用に協力してくれる体制ができているんですね。でそれがお金によったりとかで、それが悪いことでないんですけど、根性論でいく日本人って精神と人のつながりでいってるんで、どんなにお金を積もうとも人間同士の関係性、この会社と仲いいからこのスタッフが口説いてくれて、その2人の関係性だけで借りしてくれるとかっていうことが多くて、逆にそこにじゃあお金払うからいくら払えばいいって言ったら怒っちゃうんです。金の問題じゃない、ふざけるなって追い返されて、逆にお金をどんなに積もうとしてもその姿勢が嫌だ、その精神が嫌だって言われたらもう絶対に貸してくれないので、ブラックレインって映画の時にリドリー・スコットでも諦めて日本じゃ撮影できないって帰ったくらい、日本って撮影許可が下りないので、そういう違いがあります。だからグラッチの時も本当にまだ使ってない新しい病院がハリウッドのホラー映画のためならって貸してくれたんですけど、まだ一切使ってないシーツ、ベッド、全部きれいな壁とかの部屋を控え室にアメリカの女優のために一人で貸してくれたんだけれども、病院側の人が多分アメリカの方は靴を脱ぐ習慣がないと思うから、でもそれは困るのでシーツの上に絶対に靴を脱いで上がるようにしてくださいって再三言われていて、プロデューサーにも言ったのにアメリカのプロデューサーがアメリカの女優にそれを言ってなかった、気を使って、そしたら思った通り靴で上がっちゃってぴょんぴょん飛び跳ねて、で日本のスタッフが全員僕以外いなくなったって、あの人たちは仕事できませんって言って、僕以外の日本のスタッフが全員その日帰っちゃったっていうこともありました。それぐらい大変です。
So in terms of working here in the States, I know the systems are quite different between like independent film and Hollywood, but in talking about Hollywood, in my experience, if you go through all the proper channels and if everything is arranged according to the way the system dictates, you will be able to get the approval of the police and any other necessary supporting partners. You can rent facilities or use facilities as you like for your shoot. It really depends on the money. It's something that people will give you access to. However, in Japan, as I mentioned, it's a bit different where I talk about guts, right, or the spirit. That's very important. It's the spirit among people, or the relationship. Interpersonal relationships come into play a lot more in Japan. For example, if someone knows someone who works at a certain company and they get along well, they will go out of their way to allow you to use a facility, or they will persuade someone else to allow you to use their facility. It's not a matter of money the way it comes down to here in the States. It actually is almost offensive if you say to someone, like, listen, I can give you this much. They might actually get mad and not even want to work with you if that's the case. So it's less about money and more about interpersonal relationships. There's actually a famous story when Ridley Scott was making Black Rain. He had so much trouble getting permission for his shoots that he's like, I can't do this, and just gave up on it. That just shows you how difficult it can be in Japan if you're not familiar with the system there. We had one story related to The Grudge in regarding to using a brand new hospital. This illustrates the interpersonal connection being important. We had talked to them and we said this is a Hollywood film we're making, and we actually got permission to use their beds and their hospital rooms and the waiting room for an American actress. The one condition was that they thought that the Americans would not understand, but in Japan you have to obviously take your shoes off before you go into buildings. So they said at the very least, please make sure the actress takes her shoes off before she goes on the hospital bed on top of the sheets, because again, this is a brand new facility. This was all conveyed, but for some reason the producer neglected to tell the actress about this. So as you might expect, she jumped on the bed, this new bed, new sheets, with her shoes on. And as a result, all the staff, except for myself, walked out because I said we can't work with someone like this. So that just shows you how difficult it can be.
監督の僕が一番気を使うっていう
And I was the one who was
状態
really,
でした
I was the one who was being the most concerned about things and most worried about things. But
So just a couple quick questions, and then we'll turn to the audience. I saw online, apparently it's a sketch you did of Kayoko's Ghost. You can draw. Do you?
Online?
Yeah. Did you used to draw the images of your films, or is that a fake?
Remember.
But can you draw? And do you use that in your planning?
上手かどうかわからないですけど、よく自分で書きます。イメージボードとか、ストーリーボード。
I don't know if you'd say I'm good, skilled at drawing or not, but I do often create my own image board or storyboarding. I do.
Okay, and you actually draw, it's not stick figures.
自分で描くんですが、この簡単な描き方ではなく。
はい、自分で書く、結構書きます。
I do.
Yeah, he must have loved manga like everyone else.
Manga.
So, last night we talked about set pieces, action shots. The action scene. You have, all your movies have this. What's your favorite, and what was the one that was most terrifying to film that gave you a heart attack?
In my films, right?
Yes, in your films. We want to know, like, what your process and what you like and what was scary for you, a challenge.
質問がちょっとよくわかんない。
Like the elevator scene.
エレベーターの場面とか牛首に乗るエレベーター場面とか、そのようなセットピースなんですけども、アクションシーンみたいな。
やっぱり日常の生活で自分がこれ怖いなって不安を感じるものとか、そういうところから発想しますね。エレベーターとか世界中にあるし、皆さん必ず使うと思うんですよね、生活の中で。そういう場所でこんなことが起こったら怖いなって思うことをちょっと飛躍して大きく解釈したりとか、みんなが何でもないように普段から通勤とか通学で使ってる交通施設とか歩いてる道とかで、例えばアスファルトとかなんていうんですか、側溝溝みたいなのじゃないか、マンホールとかなんかそういうもので発想することが多い。
I think for me, the most frightful things come from just regular everyday things. That it's something that becomes scary and can make you very anxious, but it's something that's part of your everyday life. So you mentioned the elevator scene. This is something as well. This is a universal thing. Most people in their lives take an elevator at some point. So I think making that sort of very regular, everyday place, scary, is and of course I accentuate it and I interpret it to make it a bit, different than everyday life. But another example is, let's say it's something you pass every day on the way to commuting to work or going to school, on the road that you walk on, on the asphalt, there might be a manhole, something creepy or scary coming from that. Something could emerge from that. I think for me, scariness comes from tweaking these everyday things.
So what was the most fun to film?
今までです。
Up until now?
Yeah.
25年ぐらいやってるんで思い出せないなと思って。
I've been working for 25 years, so
All right.
I don't know.
So because of the COVID policy, we're not passing the mic around, so speak up. And Karen,
I think we are
Yeah,
passing the mic around.
Well, are you
So
passing
please,
around the mic?
yeah, please have your hands up.
Okay, I thought that was
and
illegal.
Hold on, we will bring you the mic. Please, and go ahead and keep your masks on when you ask.
Thank you for your insights. I have a question, and this comes from being a person with a disability. I'm always struck in your horror movies about the way in which you encourage us to confront disabled or non-normative bodies. Remember in the Oxhead Village when the woman's foot curls upwards? And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you see the relationship between horror and disability. Is this a way to make us confront bodies that we would not otherwise see?
牛首村生徒ビレッジで出てきたラストに出てきたあの女の人は、障害というか生まれ持ってのものじゃなくて穴に落とされてから足が折れてしまってそれを治す人もいない状態で多分穴蔵で虫を食べたりしながら生き延びたということなのでその時に足が折れてそのままひねった状態になってしまって育ってしまったという設定なんですけれどもでもその障害を持った人を特別扱いしない方がいいと思っているので逆にその障害を持ったこんな障害を持っていることで日常生活で起こる普通の人には気づけないような恐怖描写とかホラーで作れるしそういうのを結構盛り込もうとするとプロデューサーや会社からストップがかかって逆に気を使いすぎるってことがたまにありますけど僕は使えるものは使っていこうと思ってます同じ人間ですから変に気を使うのが嫌なので
So in Oxford Village, I think the scene you're referring to is so the woman who walked that way with her leg. It wasn't a disability or something that she was born with. It actually came from her circumstances where she was in a hole, and I think in that situation she broke her foot. There was no one there to fix it. She was surviving by eating bugs and whatever she could. So that accounts for her appearing like she had a disability, but it wasn't something she was born with. Just to clarify. But yeah, my stance is that I don't think there should be any sort of special handling or to treat someone who has a disability as different. I think that it can't, if there is a certain kind of disability, it could be a way to show different fear or a way that someone's living in their life. Whenever I have tried to delve into the sphere of disability, I have occasionally been stopped by the producers or the production company. So I've had a couple of thwarted attempts. They were telling me I was a bit too focusing on it too much. But that being said, we're all the same people, so I would like to depict disability as I can. But depending on circumstances, I can't always do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, let's take the, I don't even know how to, there's a black and white, yes. Can you, right, you have a white shirt, yes. Yes. And then the person that's right in the middle in the very back row.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'm just curious about what you think are some unique characteristics of Japanese horror cinema in comparison to Western horror films, both in terms of the narrative and the style, the formal language, and how is it connected to the Japanese culture and society. Thank you.
僕は日本で生まれ育っているので アジア人のアジアの感覚なんですけれども、アメリカのリメイク版のザ・グラッチに作って感じたのは、欧米、アメリカやヨーロッパ、特にアメリカはそうなんですけど、は直接的で暴力的、男性的だなと。で、逆にアジアは韓国、中国、台湾とかタイとかの話聞いててもそうなんですけど、日本人と近くて感覚がアジアっていうのはむしろアメリカとかと比べると女性的で間接的で精神的だなというふうに大きくですけど、全員がそうじゃないですけどっていうふうに感じていました。
Just to give you, this is a very, broad strokes, but I'm born and raised in Japan, so I would be the representative of Asia. But when I worked on the remake of The Grudge here in the States, there were things that I perceived, that being that there is a difference between Western and Eastern, especially in regard to America. The way horror is here, it's more violent, more explicit, and it's more masculine. On the other hand, when we look at Asian countries, any of the countries that are close to Japan, like Korea, China, Taiwan, Thailand, this can be said about any of these Asian countries, compared to the States, the horror films tend to be more indirect in terms of the way things are depicted. It's more feminine or more female-centered, and it's more psychological. Again, this is broad strokes, but it's not that all the films are like
特
that.
に日本は子供の時から生まれた時から遠慮することを美学と美しいとされるしつけで教育される。だからアメリカの人のように今も質問たくさん手を挙げてくれましたけど、質問ある人って言っても日本人ってこう恥ずかしそうにして直接手を挙げないんですよ。質問があってで僕出ようとしたらもうそこにバーッとあんじゃねえかよみたいななんかシャイというかみんなの前だと恥ずかしいだというあんまりこう主張しないことが美しいとされる文化圏があるので、逆にそういうのも影響してると思うんですけど、ゴーストとかも男性的でこう暴力的な生きている時に力を発揮できる男性的なものよりも、むしろ生きている間は秘めててそのまま思いを残して死んでしまった女の人の魂の力の方が生きている時には力がなかったけれどもずっと秘めてた思いが強いからこそ死んだ後に出てくるゴーストが怖いという考え方に転化しやすいで、それはだいぶやっぱりアメリカと日本で違うので、リメイク版を作るときの考え方がそこから根っこから違うので、ロジーさんと毎日喧嘩してましたで、いつも喧嘩を侍が止めてくれる。
So I think that this is a cultural matter because in Japan, as young children, we're actually told that in terms of morality or what is the best way to act is we're always sort of holding back or restraining ourselves. An example is just now when we were asking if anyone has questions, there were a lot of hands raised from this American audience. I think in Japan, even if there were questions, there would be a bit of embarrassment to raise your hand and ask a question in front of a whole group. However, when I go to this sort of thing in Japan and I'm walking out the door, I'm rushed by a bunch of people who want to ask me questions. So I'm like, you did have questions. They just will not ask them really in front of the group. It's not necessarily that they're shy, but again, as I said, it's considered to be the more pure or moral quality is to sort of hold back. So I think this does influence the way horror is depicted in films. Instead of the masculine, more explicit violence that is demonstrated in Western horror films, specifically American films. In Japan, any of this kind of anger or these feelings are held back when you're living, and very often it's the female spirit releases this anger, these feelings after she's gone as a ghost. This is when these feelings of rage or anger or whatever it is come out. This is a huge difference and something I experienced while making the remake of The Grudge, something I really had to think about. As a result, I was fighting on a daily basis with the producers, and it was always Sam Raimi who intervened and tried to stop our fighting.
I wanted to elaborate more on the cultural origins of The Grudge and how it shifted approach to the American movie.
リメイク、まあもともとリメイクということを分かっていて引き受けたので、しかもアメリカに向けてだから日本のお客様もオリジナルの順を知っているから、そのアメリカのオーディエンスに向けなきゃいけないというのは僕が考え方をちょっと考え直さなきゃいけないところだなとは思って、それはプロデューサーをはじめ編集、エディターからいろんなアメリカのクルーから話を聞いて取り入れたところも言うことを聞いといた方がいいなと思って取り入れたところもあるし、ここはちょっと日本人の僕に監督をさせるならここは譲れないっていうところになったので、そのバランスを取るのが大変ではあります。だから喧嘩がお互いが主張ばっかりになってしまうと、いやもうだったら俺日本帰るからアメリカの監督にやらせればいいし、言うこと聞くやつにやらせればあなたも楽でしょっていうふうにどうしてもなっちゃうので、それではいけないと思ってお互いになぜこう言い合いになるのか、やっぱりカルチャーギャップなんですよね。そこを埋めていくバランスを取るっていうのが最初はやっぱり大変な作業でした。
言い出したんですか？遠慮して言わなかったんですか？
僕は言っちゃう方なんです。
言っちゃった。
はい。日本語で。
日本語で。
なんかわかんないけど、このちっちゃい男怒ってる。
So in terms of, to begin with, this was a remake, so I knew I had to go into it thinking that it's for an American audience. Of course, the Japanese audience is already familiar with Ju-on, so that's not who I'm making it for. So I knew that I would have to sort of rethink my conception of the franchise. So in light of that, I thought that I had to ask the opinion of producers and editors and American crew. I figured I probably should incorporate their way of thinking, so I did ask and do some research that way. But I also felt that as a Japanese director, there were some things that I was not willing to compromise on. So there was a bit of difficulty in trying to achieve that balance. I didn't want to get into a verbal altercation, but I actually said in Japanese, if this is such a problem, then maybe I'll just go back to Japan and you can get yourself a different director and that it'll make it easier for you. But I knew that would just escalate things. So again, I was just this person getting really upset in Japanese. I didn't say it, but again, this was a cultural gap that it was a bit of a struggle to try to bridge.
Okay, one more question. Who would like to ask? Yes. Sorry.
Thank you. So you already talked about the Western and Asian horror film differences. Can you go more into detail about maybe the Korean film and Thai horror film differences between Japanese or even similarities? Thank you.
タイと韓国と日本ってなるとものすごく細かいその宗教的なものが絡んでくるので、僕もちょっと正直詳しくは答えようがないですね。なんかでしかもホラー映画だと現実がベースにあっても現実以上のことがを起こしたりするんですよ。韓国の何て映画だったか忘れたけど、子供の男の子のお化けが出てきた時にろうそくのろうをボリボリ食べているシーンがあって、これは意味がわからないことをしているという怖さのシーンなのか、韓国でそういう習慣があるのかもう分かんなかったので、そういう国によって細かい違いがあると思うので、今の僕にちょっと答えきれないです。タイも韓国もそんなに詳しいわけじゃない。
That is a bit of a difficult question to answer, only because for, let's say, Thailand or Korea, I think this actually comes down to not only cultural, but specifically religious considerations might come into play. So honestly, I'm not well versed enough to really answer in detail, especially when we talk about horror. Even if it is based in reality, there's going to be some paranormal activity or paranormal things that are going on. One example is, it's a Korean film, I can't remember the director, but it featured a young boy who was a ghost. And he was eating the wax from a candle, and I didn't know if that was just something that was intended to be like strange and scary, or if it was actually based on a Korean custom. So that's just one example of how you really sort of have to get into the specifics. And I'm not, unfortunately, that well versed in those specifics in regard to Thailand or Korea.
So, before we wrap up, we know you really want to make a comedy.
You want to comment?
Yeah, you want to make a comedy, not a horror comedy, not a comedy. Are you writing a comedy script?
脚本は書いてはいないです。
Not currently writing the script, but
でも頭にはいっぱいありますよ。
but my head is full of ideas of what I'd like to do.
I can't wait to see what that is.
皆さん質問答えきれなくて申し訳すみません。ありがとうございます。
I know there were a lot of hands up, and I apologize for not being able to get to everyone.
Well,
We can probably
Yeah.
accommodate you outside. We also have flyers that Mr. Shimizu will be signing for everyone, so, just come out to the main desk where you checked in and you can do that there. And because next week, he has an interview, right?
待ってる人。
So,
Booking.
yeah,
Oh,
okay, we
booking.
only have about 10 minutes, so, meanwhile, next week is Mr. Shimizu's 50th birthday. Maybe we can celebrate with him.
oh, nice.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Thank you so much. どうもありがとうございます。
Let's take a picture.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, photos, and since we really strapped for time.
And don't forget this special poster. This is a ox here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, this is the one that's on his t-shirt. So you turn it upside down and there's Koki's face.
Flip it to see the face.
That's nice.
このポスター僕も持ってません。
I actually don't know this poster, so whoever gets it is really lucky.